Captain Taemin stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Horizon's Edge, staring at the message that had just arrived. The text glowed on the main screen in bright blue letters, translated from an alien language into English. He read it 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood something. Ambassador Sujin walked up beside him, her face pale. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Captain, is this real?" she asked quietly. Taemin nodded slowly. "The translation systems have checked it 4 times. This is what they sent us." The message was simple and terrifying. It came from something called the Vorthak Dominion. They claimed to rule the entire galaxy. They demanded that Earth give them 70% of all resources, 30% of all people to work as slaves, and complete control of all technology. The message said Earth had 30 days to agree, or they would destroy the planet. "How many species have received messages like this?" Sujin asked. Lieutenant Hana, the communications officer, looked up from her station. "According to the galactic database we received with first contact, every single species in the galaxy got this message when they were discovered. All 15,000 member worlds." "And how many refused?" Taemin asked, though he already feared the answer. "None, sir. 0. Every species agreed within days." The bridge fell silent. Outside the ship's windows, Earth looked peaceful and beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. 8 billion people lived down there, going about their normal lives. They had no idea that aliens had just demanded most of them become slaves. Taemin opened a communication channel to Earth Defense Command. "Admiral Dong-hyun, we need an emergency meeting. We've received the tribute demand." 2 hours later, Taemin and Sujin sat in a room deep underground at Earth Defense Headquarters. Around the table sat the most important people in the world. Admiral Dong-hyun led Earth's military forces. General Haiwan commanded the ground troops. Dr. Jiwoo was Earth's top scientist who studied alien life. President So-young represented all of Earth's governments. Admiral Dong-hyun was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and never lost a battle. But he looked worried now. "Tell us exactly what the message said," he ordered. Sujin read the demand again. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a long time. "What happens to species that agree to this?" President So-young asked. Dr. Jiwoo opened her tablet and showed them pictures and data. "I've been studying the tributary species for months. The Vorthak don't just take what they demand and leave. They come back every few years and take more. Within 50 years, most worlds become empty. The people are either dead or working as slaves on other planets. Their cultures disappear. Their languages are forgotten." General Haiwan slammed her fist on the table. "So we're supposed to choose between dying quickly or dying slowly?" "The Vorthak have ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years, Admiral Dong-hyun said. They have the biggest military force anyone has ever seen. Their war fleets have destroyed entire star systems. When they attack a planet, nothing survives." "What about negotiation?" Sujin asked. "Maybe we can make a deal. Give them less than they want." Dr. Jiwoo shook her head. "I've read every record of species that tried to negotiate. The Vorthak don't make deals. You agree to their demands completely, or they kill everyone and take what they want anyway." Commander Min-ho, who led Earth's special forces, spoke up. "I've been studying their technology from the monitoring stations they placed around our solar system. They're advanced, but not as much as they want us to think. A lot of their power comes from fear and the resources they've stolen from other worlds." "Are you saying we could fight them?" President So-young asked. "I'm saying they're not magic. They can be hurt. They can be beaten, but—" Min-ho paused. "We would need to be very smart about how we do it." Engineer Bo-ra, who designed Earth's newest spaceships, looked at her notes. "If we had time to prepare, we might have a chance. But they're not going to give us years to build up our forces." Intelligence Officer Kyung-soo, who had been quiet until now, cleared his throat. "There's something else to consider. If we fight back, even if we lose, other species might see that the Vorthak can be resisted. That could start something bigger." Admiral Dong-hyun stared at the table. "So our choices are, give up and watch our people slowly die as slaves, or fight back and probably die quickly, but maybe inspire others." "What about the third option?" Taemin said. Everyone looked at him. "What if we don't lose?" General Haiwan laughed, but not because she thought it was funny. "Captain, they have 10,000 ships for every one of ours. They have weapons that can crack planets in half." "But they've never fought humans before," Taemin replied. They've never fought a species that grew up fighting each other for thousands of years. They've never fought people who invented war as an art form. Dr. Jiwoo nodded slowly. Humans are different from most species. We're more aggressive, more creative in combat, more willing to take risks. Most species in the galaxy are peaceful by nature. They gave up when they saw the Vorthak's power. The question is, President So-young said, are we willing to risk 8 billion lives on the chance that being different might be enough? The room fell quiet again. Outside they could hear the normal sounds of people working, talking, living their lives. In a few days, those people would learn that aliens wanted to enslave them. Taemin thought about his daughter who was starting college next month. He thought about his parents who had lived through humanity's last great war. He thought about all the people who had fought and died throughout history so that their children could be free. We need to make a decision, Admiral Dong-hyun said. The Vorthak expect an answer in 30 days. If we're going to fight, we need to start preparing now. And if we're going to surrender, Soo-jin added quietly, we need to start preparing our people for what's coming. President So-young stood up. I want every option studied. Military, diplomatic, scientific. I want to know everything about the Vorthak. Everything about the species that submitted to them. And everything about what might happen if we refuse. As the meeting ended, Taemin looked out the window at the sky. Somewhere up there, alien ships were watching Earth, waiting for humanity's answer. In 30 days, they would learn what humans were really made of. Dr. Jiwoo had not slept in 3 days. Her office was covered with papers, computer screens, and empty coffee cups. She had been studying every piece of information about the tributary species, and what she found made her sick to her stomach. She picked up her phone and called Admiral Dong-hyun. Sir, you need to see this immediately. Bring the others. An hour later, the emergency council gathered in Dr. Jiwoo's lab. She had prepared a presentation that would change everything. I've analyzed the fate of every species that submitted to the Vorthak, she began. The pattern is always the same. First, they take what they demanded. Then they come back in 5 years and take more. They say the galaxy has new threats and needs more resources. She showed them pictures of worlds that had once been green and full of life. Now they were gray, empty rocks. This is Kepler 442b. It was home to 6 billion people called the Altani. They agreed to Vorthak demand 60 years ago. Today the planet is dead. The last Altani died in a slave camp on a mining world. President So-young stared at the images. How many species have been completely eliminated? Over 3,000, Dr. Jiwoo replied. And the ones that still exist? Their populations are less than 1% of what they used to be. Their cultures are gone. Their children don't even remember their original languages. Commander Minho spoke up. Doctor, what about species that tried to fight back? Dr. Jiwoo's expression grew darker. 17 species have attempted military resistance over the past 50,000 years. The Vorthak destroyed them all within days, but... She paused and brought up new data. I found something interesting about those battles. The screen showed ship designs and weapon specifications. The Vorthak didn't win those fights because their technology was so much better. They won because they had overwhelming numbers and because the other species didn't know how to fight. General Haiwan leaned forward. What do you mean? Most galactic species are naturally peaceful. They don't have concepts like guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, or strategic deception. When they fought the Vorthak, they lined up their ships and attacked directly. It was like bringing swords to a gunfight. Engineer Bora raised her hand. Dr. Jiwoo, what about their technology? How advanced are they really? That's what Commander Minho and I discovered, Dr. Jiwoo said. Their ships are well built and their weapons are powerful, but they're not magical. Most of their technology is just copied and improved from species they conquered. They haven't invented anything truly new in thousands of years. Minho nodded. I've been inside one of their monitoring stations. Their computers are actually less advanced than ours in some ways. They rely on brute force more than clever engineering. Admiral Dong-hyun studied the data. So you're saying we might have a chance? I'm saying humans are different from every other species they've faced, Dr. Jiwoo replied. We understand war in ways they don't. We know how to fight when we're outnumbered. We know how to turn disadvantages into advantages. Intelligence Officer Kyung-soo had been reviewing files on his tablet. There's something else. I've been monitoring communications from tributary worlds since we got this demand. Something strange is happening. He connected his tablet to the main screen. These are secret communications between resistance groups on 12 different worlds. Small groups that have been hiding for decades, waiting for something to change. The messages were short and coded, but their meaning was clear. People across the galaxy were asking the same question. What will the humans do? They're watching us, Kyung-soo explained. Word has spread that Earth received the tribute demand. For the first time in 50,000 years, tributary species are wondering if someone might say no. President So-young stood up and walked to the window. Outside, people were going about their normal lives. They still didn't know about the alien demand. The governments had agreed to keep it secret until they decided what to do. If we surrender, she said quietly, we condemn our children to slavery and eventual extinction. If we fight, we probably all die. But maybe we inspire others to fight for their freedom. There's a third possibility, Taemin said. Everyone turned to look at him. What if we don't just fight? What if we win? General Haiwan shook her head. Captain, be realistic. They have millions of ships. We have a few hundred. But they've never fought anyone who fought back intelligently, Taemin replied. They expect us to line up our ships and attack them head-on. What if we don't do what they expect? Bora was looking at ship specifications on her tablet. If we had time to modify our ships and develop new weapons, we might be able to hurt them badly. But we only have 30 days. Then we work with what we have, Minho said. Human history is full of examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through superior tactics and motivation. Dr. Jiwoo brought up a new image. There's one more thing. I've been studying Vorthak biology. They're crystalline beings, which means they might have weaknesses we can exploit. She showed them detailed scans of Vorthak physiology. Their bodies resonate at specific frequencies. If we could generate the right sound waves, we might be able to disrupt their nervous systems. Sound waves? Admiral Dong-hyun asked. Like music? Exactly like music. Human music specifically. We naturally create harmonic frequencies that could be harmful to them. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were talking about using human creativity and art as weapons against an alien empire. Kyung-soo looked up from his tablet. I'm getting more messages from resistance groups. They're asking if the rumors are true. Are the humans really considering saying no? President So-young turned back to face the group. We need to make a decision. The world's leaders are meeting tomorrow to vote. They're going to ask me what I recommend? What are our real options? Admiral Dong-hyun asked. Dr. Jiwoo answered. Option 1, we surrender. Our children become slaves and humanity disappears within a century. Option 2, we fight and probably lose quickly but maybe inspire a galactic revolution. Option 3, we fight and somehow against all odds we find a way to win. What does your gut tell you? President So-young asked Taemin. Taemin thought about his daughter again. He thought about all the humans who had refused to bow to tyrants throughout history. Ma'am, humans have never been good at accepting impossible odds. We've always found ways to do things that couldn't be done. The Vorthak have ruled for 50,000 years because no one has ever seriously challenged them. Minho added. They're not used to real resistance. General Haiwan stood up. If we're going to do this, we need to start preparing now. We need to turn every advantage we have into a weapon. President So-young nodded slowly. Then let's prepare for war. And let's prepare to send a message that will shock the galaxy. As the meeting ended, everyone knew that humanity was about to make the most important decision in its history. In a few days, the Vorthak would receive an answer they had never heard before. The final day had arrived. Ambassador Soo-jin stood in the United Nations building in New York, looking out at the largest gathering of world leaders in human history. Every country on Earth had sent representatives. Outside, crowds of people filled the streets waiting to learn their fate. For the past month, the world had known about the Vorthak demand. The news had caused panic at first, then anger, then a strange sense of unity. Humans who had been fighting each other for years suddenly realized they were all facing the same threat. In space, Captain Taemin watched the Vorthak fleet through his ship's cameras. Over 8,000 alien ships surrounded Earth's solar system. Each ship was the size of a city. Their weapons could turn planets into dust. But Taemin wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready. Down on Earth, President So-young walked to the podium. The room fell silent. Billions of people across the planet watched on television, computers, and phones. But they weren't the only ones watching. Across the galaxy, on 15,000 different worlds, alien beings stopped what they were doing to watch Earth's response. For 50,000 years, this moment had always been the same. A new species would receive the Vorthak demand, panic for a few days, then surrender. The tribute would be paid, and the galaxy would continue as it always had. On the Vorthak flagship, High Chancellor Vorthtal waited for Earth's submission. He was ancient, even by Vorthak standards. He had seen thousands of species kneel before the Dominion. Some cried, some begged, some tried to negotiate, but they all surrendered in the end. Vorthtal expected Earth's response to be like all the others. A long document explaining why humans were sorry for any delay, promising to pay the tribute immediately, and begging for mercy. The bigger the species, the longer the apology usually was. President So-young began to speak. People of Earth, and beings across the galaxy who are watching, we have made our decision. On distant worlds, in hidden corners and secret meeting places, resistance fighters pressed closer to their communication devices. For the first time in their lives, they dared to hope. 30 days ago, the Vorthak Dominion demanded that humanity surrender 70% of our resources, 30% of our people, and complete control of our technology. Sujin stepped forward. She held a single piece of paper in her hands. The paper contained Earth's official response to the Vorthak demand. She had spent days writing it, then rewriting it, then writing it again. We have studied this demand carefully, President So-young continued. We have considered all options. We have thought about our children, our future, and our place in the galaxy. Vorthtal leaned forward slightly. This was taking longer than usual, but some species needed more time to accept their fate. Our response is simple and final, Sujin said, stepping up to the microphone. She looked directly into the camera, knowing that her words would travel across the galaxy at the speed of light. She held up the paper. On it was written a single word: no. The silence that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. On thousands of worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives in submission heard something impossible: refusal. In the Vorthak command center, Vorthtal stared at his communication screen. The translation system checked the word multiple times. It was correct. The humans had said no, not "please give us more time," not "we need to discuss terms," not "we beg for mercy," just "no, Captain." Taemin felt his heart racing as he watched the Vorthak fleet's reaction. For several minutes, nothing happened. The alien ships just floated in space as if they couldn't believe what they had heard. On tributary worlds across the galaxy, something extraordinary began to happen. In slave factories, workers stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. In government buildings, officials who had spent their lives enforcing Vorthak rule started asking questions they had never dared to ask before. On Altara Prime, a young alien named Kess was working in a mineral processing plant. When the news reached her world, she put down her tools and walked outside. For the first time in her life, she wondered what it would be like to be free. On Meridian Station, a group of former soldiers who had been forced to serve Vorthak interests stopped their patrol and gathered around a communication terminal. They listened to Earth's response over and over again. One word. But it changed everything. Back on the Vorthak flagship, Vorthtal's shock was turning into rage. In 50,000 years, no species had ever refused the tribute demand. The very idea was unthinkable. It went against the natural order of the galaxy. Destroy them, he ordered. Destroy them all. Leave nothing alive on that planet. But even as he gave the order, Vorthtal felt something he had never experienced before. Uncertainty. If one species could say no, what would stop others from doing the same? On Earth, Admiral Dong-hyun received word that the Vorthak fleet was moving into attack formation. All ships prepare for battle, he commanded. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every being in the galaxy who has ever dreamed of freedom. Dr. Jiwoo activated the sonic weapons she had developed. They would broadcast human music at frequencies designed to disrupt Vorthak nervous systems. She hoped it would work. They had only had 1 month to test it. Engineer Bora powered up the defensive system she had built. Every ship, every space station, every satellite around Earth was now a weapon. They might not be as powerful as the Vorthak fleet, but they were all humanity had. Commander Minho led his special forces teams to their hidden positions throughout the solar system. They would wait for the perfect moment to strike. Intelligence Officer Kyung-soo opened communication channels to resistance groups across the galaxy. "Tell them Earth is fighting," he broadcast. "Tell them the war for freedom has begun." As the first Vorthak ships opened fire, President So-young made one final broadcast. "To every being in the galaxy who hears this message, freedom is not something you ask for. It's something you take. Today humanity chooses to fight. We may die, but we will die free." The message reached every corner of the galaxy. On world after world, beings who had never imagined resisting their oppressors began to think dangerous thoughts. If humans could say no to the Vorthak, maybe they could too. The battle for Earth had begun. But more importantly, the battle for the soul of the galaxy had started with a single word that no one had dared to speak for 50,000 years. No. High Chancellor Vorthtal watched his fleet advance on Earth, but for the first time in his long life, he wasn't certain of victory. The humans had done something impossible. They had refused to kneel, and across the galaxy, millions of beings were beginning to wonder what would happen if they refused to kneel as well. The first Vorthak energy beams lit up space like deadly lightning. Captain Taman gripped his command chair as his ship shook from a near miss. Around him, Earth's small fleet scattered in all directions, following the battle plan they had practiced for weeks. "All ships, remember the plan?" Admiral Dong-hyun's voice crackled over the communication system. "We don't fight them head-on. We make them chase us." The Vorthak had expected Earth's ships to form battle lines and attack directly, like every other species had done. Instead, humanity's forces split into dozens of small groups, darting between asteroids, hiding behind moons, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. High Chancellor Vorthtal watched the tactical display with growing frustration. "Why are they running?" he demanded. "Order all ships to pursue and destroy them." But the humans weren't running away. They were leading the Vorthak ships into traps. Commander Minho watched from his hidden position in the asteroid belt as a group of Vorthak vessels flew directly into the kill zone. "Now," he whispered into his communicator. Suddenly, what the aliens had thought were ordinary asteroids revealed themselves to be weapon platforms. Engineer Bora had spent weeks disguising human technology as space rocks. The Vorthak ships found themselves surrounded by unexpected firepower. 3 alien vessels exploded before they realized what was happening. It was the first time in 50,000 years that Vorthak ships had been destroyed by a species they were trying to conquer. On Earth, Dr. Jiwoo activated her sonic weapon system. Radio telescopes and communication arrays across the planet began broadcasting human music at specific frequencies. The sound waves traveled through space toward the Vorthak fleet. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, on the Vorthak flagship, crew members began staggering. Their crystalline bodies started vibrating uncontrollably. Some collapsed completely. "What's happening?" Vorthtal roared, but his own voice was shaking. The human music was disrupting their nervous systems. "Sir, it's some kind of sonic attack," a technician reported, struggling to stay upright. "The frequencies are interfering with our neural pathways." Captain Taemin couldn't believe what he was seeing. The massive Vorthak ships were slowing down, their formation falling apart. "All ships target the vessels that are drifting," he ordered. "Hit them while they're confused." Earth's fleet attacked with everything they had. Missiles, energy weapons, even converted mining equipment struck the disoriented Vorthak ships. More alien vessels exploded or began spinning out of control. But the humans knew this advantage wouldn't last long. The Vorthak had thousands of ships, and they were starting to adapt to the sonic attack by changing their communication frequencies. Across the galaxy, other beings watched the battle with amazement. On the tributary world of Nexus 7, a former military commander named Wrath stared at his viewing screen in disbelief. "They're actually hurting them," he whispered to his companions. "The humans are making the Vorthak bleed." Similar conversations were happening on hundreds of worlds. For the first time in their lives, people were seeing the Vorthak lose battles. The crystalline empire that had seemed invincible was being challenged by a small, young species from a planet most beings had never heard of. On Kepler Station, a group of maintenance workers stopped their repairs and gathered around a communication terminal. They watched as human ships destroyed another Vorthak vessel, using nothing but cleverness and determination. "If they can fight back," one worker said quietly, "why can't we?" Intelligence Officer Kyung-soo was monitoring communications across the galaxy. What he saw made him smile despite the battle raging around Earth. "Admiral, you need to hear this," he reported to Dong-hyun. He played intercepted messages from a dozen different worlds. Resistance groups that had been hiding for decades were suddenly becoming active. Some were sabotaging Vorthak supply lines. Others were attacking tribute collection centers. The spark of rebellion was spreading, but the Vorthak were far from defeated. Vorthtal had regrouped his fleet and was preparing for a massive assault on Earth itself. "Enough games," he snarled. "Destroy their planet. Kill every human. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us." 2,000 Vorthak ships moved into position around Earth, their weapons charged with enough power to crack the planet's crust. Admiral Dong-hyun knew that humanity's small fleet couldn't stop an attack of this size. "All ships, form defensive positions around Earth," he ordered. "We make our final stand here." Captain Taemin looked at his crew. They were tired, scared, but determined. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," he told them. Then something unexpected happened. New ships appeared on the edge of the solar system. But they weren't Vorthak vessels. They were tribute ships from other species, supposed to be delivering resources to Vorthak worlds. "Earth Fleet, this is Captain Zara of the Alteran vessel Breaking Dawn," a voice said over the communication system. "We're here to help." "This is Commander Thex of the Meridian Defense Force," another voice added. "Our crews have voted to join the fight for freedom." More and more ships appeared, tribute vessels from across the galaxy, their crews inspired by humanity's refusal to surrender. They had stolen their own ships and come to Earth to join the battle. Vorthtal couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Impossible," he whispered. They wouldn't dare, but they had dared. For the first time in 50,000 years, tributary species were actively rebelling against the Vorthak dominion. Ships that should have been delivering resources were instead delivering weapons fire. The Battle of Earth had become something larger. It was now a battle between freedom and tyranny, with beings from dozens of species fighting side by side. Dr. Jiwoo modified her sonic weapons to work with the new allied ships. Soon, music from multiple worlds was being broadcast at the Vorthak fleet. Human jazz mixed with Alteran harmonics and Meridian percussion created a symphony of resistance. Engineer Bo-Ra worked frantically to coordinate the defense. She had to manage weapon systems from a dozen different technologies, but somehow she made them all work together. The battle raged for hours. Vorthak ships exploded, but so did many human and allied vessels. The space around Earth became a graveyard of metal and crystal, but something had changed in the galaxy. On world after world, beings who had lived their entire lives in submission were standing up. Factories stopped producing tribute goods. Officials refused to collect taxes for the Vorthak. Young people gathered in the streets demanding freedom. Commander Minho received a message that made him laugh out loud, even in the middle of the battle. "Admiral, 3 entire Vorthak tributary fleets have just switched sides. They're attacking Vorthak military bases. The revolution was spreading faster than Vorthak ships could travel to stop it. The empire that had ruled through fear for 50,000 years was discovering that fear could work both ways." As the battle continued around Earth, President So-young made another broadcast to the galaxy. "To every being who dreams of freedom, you are not alone. Today we fight not just for humanity, but for the right of all species to determine their own destiny." The message was heard on thousands of worlds, and on each world, more beings began to believe that change was possible. The word "no" had become more than just Earth's answer to a tribute demand. It had become a rallying cry for revolution across the entire galaxy. 3 days into the Battle of Earth, the impossible was happening. High Chancellor Vorthtal stared at the tactical display in horror as red warning lights flashed across his command center. Rebellion had erupted on over 300 worlds simultaneously. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the Dominion," his aide reported, voice shaking. "Tribute fleets are refusing orders. Garrison commanders are reporting widespread uprisings. Some of our own forces are joining the rebels." Vorthtal's crystalline form flickered with rage and fear. In 3 days, 50,000 years of absolute rule was crumbling. All because one small species had said no. Captain Taemin watched through his ship's viewport as another group of Vorthak vessels surrendered. The crews were abandoning their ships and asking for safe passage home. Even the Vorthak military was losing faith in their empire. "Captain, incoming message from Admiral Dong-hyun," his communications officer reported. Dong Hyun's tired but triumphant face appeared on the screen. Taemin, you need to see this. Intelligence Officer Kyung-soo has been tracking the spread of rebellion across the galaxy. Show him, Kyung-soo. The screen changed to display a galactic map. Red dots marked every world where uprisings had begun. There were thousands of them, and the number was growing every hour. It's not just random rebellions, Kyung-soo explained. They're coordinated. Resistance groups that have been hiding for decades are working together. They're using our battle as proof that the Vorthak can be defeated. On the tributary world of Altara Prime, Kess led a group of workers in taking control of their processing plant. They had watched Earth's small fleet hold off the mighty Vorthak armada for 3 days. If humans could fight an empire, factory workers could fight their overseers. The humans showed us the way, Kess told her fellow rebels. They proved that no is a complete sentence. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Meridian Station, former soldiers turned their weapons against Vorthak commanders. On Nexus 7, entire cities declared independence. The revolution was spreading faster than anyone had imagined possible. Dr. Jiwoo was monitoring communications from rebel worlds when she made a startling discovery. Admiral, I'm detecting something incredible. The rebels aren't just fighting randomly. They're sharing our sonic weapon technology. She brought up frequency analysis charts. Music from Earth is being broadcast on hundreds of worlds. But they're not just copying our frequencies. They're adapting them, mixing them with their own cultural sounds. The galaxy was creating a symphony of freedom. Human rock music mixed with Altaran wind songs. Earth's classical orchestras blended with Meridian percussion. The sound of rebellion echoed across space itself. Engineer Bora was working frantically to coordinate not just Earth's defenses, but the technical needs of rebel forces across the galaxy. We're not just fighting a battle anymore, she told her team. We're building a new civilization. Commander Minho received reports that made him smile. Vorthak supply lines are completely broken, he announced. Rebel forces have captured or destroyed tribute shipments from over 1,000 worlds. The Dominion is running out of resources to maintain their fleet. But the real victory was happening in the minds of beings across the galaxy. For 50,000 years, the Vorthak had ruled through a simple principle. Resistance was impossible. Now every destroyed Vorthak ship, every liberated world, every successful rebellion proved that principle wrong. On the Vorthak flagship, Vorthtal faced a choice he had never imagined he would have to make. His empire was collapsing around him. His fleets were deserting or being destroyed. His tributary worlds were in open revolt. Sir, his aide said quietly, we're receiving surrender offers from the human fleet. They're willing to negotiate. Vorthtal laughed bitterly. The species he had come to crush was now offering him terms. What do they want? Ambassador Sujin's image appeared on the communication screen. Behind her stood representatives from dozens of rebel species. High Chancellor, we offer you and your remaining forces safe passage to whatever worlds you choose, in exchange for the immediate withdrawal of all Vorthak forces from tributary territories. You're giving us the chance to surrender, Vorthtal said in amazement. We're giving you the chance to end this peacefully, Sujin replied. The age of the Dominion is over, but the age of cooperation can begin. Across the galaxy, the fighting gradually stopped. Vorthak forces, cut off from supply lines and facing rebellion on every front, began accepting surrender terms. Some chose to return to their homeworlds. Others asked to join the new galactic alliance that was forming. President So-young stood before the United Nations once again, but this time she wasn't speaking just to Earth. Representatives from hundreds of liberated worlds were participating in humanity's first truly galactic assembly. 3 months ago, an alien empire demanded our submission, she began. We gave them our answer, no. Today, that answer has freed not just humanity, but thousands of species across the galaxy. The assembly erupted in cheers. Beings who had never imagined they could be free were now helping to write the constitution of a new galactic civilization. Dr. Jiwoo was asked to explain how humanity had discovered the Vorthak's weakness. It wasn't really a weakness in their technology, she said. It was a weakness in their thinking. They had ruled for so long without challenge that they forgot how to adapt. They expected us to fight like everyone else had fought. When we didn't, they didn't know how to respond. Captain Taemin found himself promoted to admiral and put in charge of the new Galactic Defense Force. His first order was simple. Our job is not to conquer or control. Our job is to make sure no species ever again has to choose between freedom and survival. Engineer Bora became the head of the Galactic Technology Sharing Council. Her mission was to help former tributary worlds rebuild using their own knowledge combined with innovations from other species. Commander Minho led the new Galactic Peacekeeping Force, which helped maintain order during the transition from Empire to Alliance. Intelligence Officer Kyung-soo became the director of the Galactic Communication Network, ensuring that no world would ever again be isolated or forced to face tyranny alone. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, Ambassador Su Jin stood in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly, building on a neutral world called Haven. Representatives from over 5,000 worlds had gathered to celebrate the first anniversary of what historians were already calling the Great Liberation. Today, we remember not just the day humanity said no to tyranny, she told the assembly. We remember the day the galaxy said yes to freedom. In schools across thousands of worlds, children learned about the day when one small species taught the universe that the most powerful word in any language is no, when spoken in defense of freedom. The Vorthok Dominion was gone. In its place stood the Free Galactic Alliance, founded on principles humanity had fought for throughout its history. That all beings are created equal, that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed, and that freedom is not something you ask for from your oppressors. It is something you take. And it all began with a single word that echoed across the galaxy and changed the destiny of trillions. No, the Age of Empires was over. The Age of Freedom had begun. On Earth, in a small park where children played under blue skies, there stood a simple monument. It contained no grand speeches or elaborate decorations, just a single word carved in stone, translated into every language in the galaxy. No. And beneath it, a smaller inscription. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is the shortest.